Mike's on Mike is made possible by contributions from listeners like you to the Jacksonville History Center. One city, many stories. Online at jackshistory.org.
Mike.
Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville, with 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer, Mike Miller.
Welcome to another episode of Mike's on Mike. I'm Mike Miller. Glad to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, Mike's on Mike brought to you by the Jacksonville History Center and our friend Alan Bliss, fine staff who keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. Last week, our colleague Mike Hightower was with us live from Ukraine, where he's on special visit, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But unfortunately, due to that trip, he's unable to join us this week, even remotely, so we're going to soldier on without him. There's a lot going on at City Hall these days, and our guest today is someone who's had, her time of stirring things up, if you will. It's all about what she sees as sunshine law violations and a tipping of the scales by the council president to send city funds to nonprofits that they work for. Leslie Jean-Bart is our guest, fifth-generation Jacksonville native and a partner in the Hogan Law Firm. She received her bachelor and law degrees from the University of Miami, which we'll forgive her for, before returning to her roots back here in Jacksonville. She's held appointed positions in civic oversight, including the Better Jacksonville Plan Citizens Oversight Committee, Florida Elections Commission, and the Jacksonville Ethics Commission. And Leslie, welcome to Mike's on Mike. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here.
All right. And our friend Mr. Tolbert's going to kick it off for us. Mike?
Yeah, welcome, Leslie. You know I love you to death. I want to point out that, among other things, Leslie is the granddaughter of Mary Singleton, a Jacksonville legend who served on the very first city council, Consolidated City Council, and in the Florida legislature. And I'm lucky that I got to know Mary and became a friend of hers. Leslie, welcome back, or welcome to Mike's on Mike. I'm going to start out this way. Today, when so many people decide that just to sit out civic and political conversation and involvement, or stand on the sidelines on the curb and throw rocks from a safe distance, what is it that causes you to engage so strongly?
Good question. I think a good part of it is I don't have the good sense to be afraid. I feel strongly about public service because I am Mary Singleton's granddaughter, and I know what good public service is supposed to be. And it's not hard. It's really not hard. And so I realize I'm someone that's in a position to speak freely. And there are a lot of people who are not in a position to speak freely who tell me that I'm speaking for them. And so that's important. It's important to speak up. My grandmother and my ancestors didn't go through what they went through for me to be quiet.
You know, as you well know, I've been involved in politics one way or another for about 50 years or more. And the game is very different today. People seem to be angry all the time. They're unwilling to listen to the other side. And elected officials can be hostile when they're challenged. Does that worry you when you're out there being a community activist? Does that worry you?
Well, it worries me that we are at that place as a country these days. But for me individually, again, I guess I don't have the good sense to be worried about it personally. So it bothers me that is happening, but it doesn't stop me from engaging.
Have you ever been threatened or feel threatened?
No. So part of it is, I always say this to people, no one has given me anything, so no one can take anything away. And so, I work at a firm where I'm a partner at a firm that they knew what they were getting when they invited me to join them. I had my own firm before that. And, if it ever came down to it, I know how to run a firm and be out on my own. I always also tell people at the end of the day, I'll go work at McDonald's before I compromise my principles, So there's just nothing that they can really do other than just be mad. So that's fine. But so far, they haven't gone that far. Not that far.
I need to say something here at the top for people who are watching the podcast and not listening to it. We did not coordinate our wardrobes together this morning before we started taping this. This was purely coincidental, though I will tell you, I'm extremely jealous of that fine piece of jewelry that Leslie has on her shirt that I don't. So next time, bring one for me, will you please? All right. Let's cut to the chase here, Leslie, if we can. When 3 city council members, including the council president, acknowledged trading text messages during a council committee meeting, you asked the state attorney, Melissa Nelson, to investigate this. What caused you to think that there was an issue there? And then what did Nelson have to say about it?
So I'm one of these people, I keep up with politics and I remember every little thing. So I remember back in 2018 or 2019 when Garrett Dennis and Anna Brochet were investigated based on a hearsay from someone in Lenny Curry's office. And it went on for a year. It was a 20-page report done and nothing was ever found. I remember that very keenly. And here we had, during a meeting out in the open, what I believe is very clearly a sunshine law violation. Everybody knows you're not supposed to be texting fellow council members during a meeting. And, you know, they were just doing it very cavalier-like it was okay to do. And that really shocked me. And so my position was, if you're going to investigate a hearsay to the extent you did back then, when it's right here in front of you on camera, admitted, then you should do the same.
Did you hear back from her?
I did. There was the other incident as well after that with Salem and Carrico about the tickets. Mm-hmm. And, but her position was that she did not see a sunshine law violation in those 2 incidents. And she talked about how there was no indication that it was knowingly done. Well, you don't have to start an investigation to know whether or not you have everything you need to charge and convict someone. You start an investigation because there's cause to believe that there has been a violation. And I think very solidly that's what we had. The Florida First Amendment Foundation executive director, he was on record on the news saying it was very clearly a sunshine law violation. And so I personally think that her position that these were not sunshine law violations is very concerning to me, because it gives them the okay, that it's okay to do what they did. And that greatly concerns me.
Did you elevate this to the state level?
I did. So as some people may know, the political consultants that State Attorney Melissa Nelson used are the same political consultants as many of the people on council, including some of the ones involved. And there is the potential conflict of interest. And, as we know, it sometimes is an actual conflict of interest, or there's an appearance of a conflict of interest. And so I was of the position that I was asking the governor to reassign this to another state attorney who wouldn't have a conflict of interest, who could look at this without that type of lens possibly being in the way.
And the response from the governor's office?
I did not receive a response from the governor's office. I don't know if I was expecting a response, but what I did want to do is I wanted to make sure I put that opportunity out there, and then they had an opportunity to respond, and they had an opportunity to also fail to respond. And so now we know what their position is. And I think that's sometimes important as well.
So where does this stand now? Is it a dead issue? Are we just moving on, or are you still involved in it?
Well, with me, nothing's a dead issue. So, right. So one of the things I did is I reached out again to the Florida First Amendment Foundation. I sent them the letter. I sent them everything, my letters, the letter from Melissa Nelson, and I asked them if they would weigh in about these situations and whether or not they thought these situations did violate the Sunshine Law. They do have a record of issuing directives at times, and I really thought that her position was very harmful to the foundation of what the Sunshine Law stands for. And, the Sunshine Law is something that's been around for a long time, almost as long as Jacksonville has been consolidated. And it came into place because there was corruption. So there's a basis. It's not just like a happy, fun thing. Sunshine Law sounds great, but it's really about making sure that when decisions are made by governing bodies, they're made in the sunshine, out in the open, and not behind closed doors and not out of our sight.
And, if I remember my history correctly, and Mr. Tolbert might be able to chime in on this as well, as I recall, our Sunshine Law was really almost unprecedented in the country. We were a leader in that type of transparency. And it was other states that decided to go along with what Florida had done. And we were really a pioneer in that. Mike Tolbert, do you know more about that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's gotten awfully cloudy in recent years. And I won't comment on why I think that's true. But, going back to the state attorney, I remember how when we were trying to stop the steal of JEA by Mayor Curry and Aaron Zahn and some of their pals, she wouldn't touch it. She wouldn't even want to have anything to do with that. And what I've found that to be the case on most everything that's political that comes her way. I remember when Ed Austin was the state attorney, he investigated his good buddy, Mayor Tansler, had a grand jury investigation of him, and his good friend, Mayor Godbold. And Harry Shorstein, when he was state attorney, it was very clear council members and everybody else knew there are things you better not do because I'll go after you. So we've lost that. I think we've lost that accountability. And given the fact that neither the state attorney or the governor seem to be anxious to do anything that impacts their own political party in a negative way, were you surprised by their decisions?
Good question. So really how it started is I was texting some really good friends of mine. And when I shared the story and I said, Melissa, because we know each other, I was like, Melissa should open up an investigation. And my friend said, she's not going to do it. And so that was kind of like why I was like, well, you know what? Let me, I'm going to put it out there and give her an opportunity to do it. So I thought that she would investigate it. This was really out in front of everybody's face. And it certainly warranted an investigation. I'm not saying anything further than that, but certainly an investigation. And so, I was a little surprised. I was surprised by the tone of her letter. She was definitely not happy that I had made those demands of her. We've known each other for a long time. And so I do think that was a factor there. And, I hope that one day we get a chance to sit down and talk about it more.
Your disagreements with President Carrico picked up some steam when you spoke for the second time at the August 26th City Council meeting. We're going to show a clip from that right now.
Good evening. Leslie Jean-Bart, my address is on file. I'm a fifth-generation Jacksonville native, and this is my second time coming to City Council because this City Council is an embarrassment to our town, an embarrassment to everyone who lives here. The last time I came before you, I told you to stop using my grandmother's name for your City Council award. And what'd you do? You gave it to him. And now y'all are just being embarrassing all over the news. And so, you know what? You want to play games, then we're going to play games, right? So you want to do tax cuts. This is a gimmick, and nobody's falling for it. It's a Happy Meal. Nobody needs a Happy Meal. We need services. But since you want to play games, you already lost your free tickets. Okay, that's gone. But you know what? Boys and Girls Club, how much money do they get from the city? And I don't mean just directly in the budget. I'm talking about Kids Hope Alliance. Disavow every dollar. Since our nonprofit community is so great and wonderful, disavow every single dollar that comes from the city. You do that, then maybe I would believe you. Probably not, though. And then you had a nerve, you called me a political hack, right? Did you ever look up the definition of a hack? A cut with a rough or heavy blow. Well,
You wanted to play games, you wanted to start it, you don't get to finish it. Get ready for the rough and heavy blows, because this ends in only one way: conviction or judgment. That is it.
My question actually has two parts to it. Number one, remind us about the Mary Singleton Award.
So the Mary Singleton Award, there are two major awards that the City Council gives out, and one of them is the Mary Singleton Award. And if I recall correctly, it goes to like the most outstanding chair. And I mean, we certainly are getting to a point where the people who are on council don't know who my grandmother was, what she stood for, and, you know, how to best honor her. And it really affected me when Council President Terrence Freeman gave the award to Aaron Bowman, because he's someone who shut down a lot of public comment, and there were different things that he did. And my grandmother was someone who went out in the community, encouraged people to come into council and, you know, and speak at meetings and be present. And he was someone who had moved, you know, public comment late. He was also someone who was more divisive than someone who brought people together. And my grandmother was certainly someone who brought people together. And so that just, it offended me. So I did send a letter to then Council President Ron Salem. We had just gone through some things with the Confederate monuments and some things that he had said there. And I had raised certain concerns. And so I said, I would like to meet with you to talk about who my grandmother was and what she stood for. And he sent me an email back. It was a very eloquent email, but he sent me an email back and it was like, it's already decided. End of email.
I'm just going to say, going back to your grandmother Mary, at one time there was a breakfast held every year to honor your grandmother, and I was involved in that. And I remember one year I wrote a speech for Jake. You may have a copy of that. Something in my mind tells me you do. I could go on and on and on. We had the Edward Waters College Choir there at one point, and Jake was talking, making an eloquent speech on his own. And Lanahan was tired of sitting, so he went over and told the choir to start singing. And so all of a sudden, here's the choir in the background, very soft, singing, and Jake talking. It was like it was choreographed.
Right.
It had been played. So it's another.
Now, let me ask the second part of my question, too, because even though you disagreed with the choice of Councilmember Bowman getting the award that particular year, why did you want them just to cancel the whole award completely? When
Council President Salem sent that email to me, it's decided. And I'm the family, and wasn't speaking by myself. My family was behind me. My family understood what I was doing. I was just the mouthpiece for my family. Mm-hmm. And, there comes a point where, frankly, I can tell that it's a very prestigious award, because if you look at almost any of their resumes afterwards, if they get it, they list that they received the Mary Singleton Award.
Or the Webb Award, which it goes to as council member.
Exactly. So it's certainly a very prestigious award. But at this point, it's not what it was meant to be. And the breakfast that Mike mentioned, it was the Justice, Peace, and Social Harmony Awards breakfast.
That's right.
And so that's kind of who my grandmother was, someone who stood for justice, peace, and social harmony. And we've gotten so far away from that, so far away. And I just firmly believe, find some other name. Find some other name. There's no part of our family that needs this award out there in her name if it's not going to honor her.
Let me ask, this gets back to more of a personal issue, but are you concerned that some people may say that you're only challenging Carrico on the sunshine violations and the funding of its nonprofit because the council continues to give out the award to more personal choices than what might be deserving of a chairman?
I mean, I honestly don't know, exactly what they're using, because I was denied a meeting to even talk about that. It goes to the chair that they think I don't know, their favorite chair. I don't know. I honestly don't know what they're looking for, but it's probably going to be someone who's a chair who's best put forth the agenda that council president has had. I think that is probably a safe thing to say about it. And that may not be in line with, of course, who my grandmother is. And so, I get personally that, they probably like having an award that is named after a woman, a Black woman.
Say a woman of color.
Right. And, but, find somebody else. We've had our good run. We're at the end of our good run.
I wish they were at the end of the good run. Listen, I want to go back to the money that you're saying Carico's nonprofit has been getting from the city. For a good long time, the three Mikes had talked about how these council members have in the past met almost when the lights were out and behind closed doors during the budget process to feather their own nest, their own employers. So that's not new. But you spoke to the Kids Hope Alliance. Let's look at that video.
As we know, the budget has been cut. The mayor's budget has been cut by $13 million, dealing with a lot of services that are very important to our community. And in a press conference that was done on Monday, the council president stated, "I'm willing to go to the table as a nonprofit leader to work with these organizations, social services organizations, to try to help them with philanthropic efforts and leverage these resources to try to help non-governmental organizations. It's just being an advocate and helping those organizations find resources out in the private sector." And I found that to be highly hypocritical, because when I try to look and see exactly how much money the company that he works for, the organization he works for, Boys and Girls Club, and it's a top 4 provider for Kids Hope Alliance. And I'm trying to find out exactly how much do they receive. And so I appreciate Ms. Nixon making the comment that you made, because transparency is so important. The only thing I could find for sure is that they receive more than $3 million. And there's a lot of numbers above $3 million. And so the hypocrisy of working for an organization that receives millions of dollars from the city while cutting millions of dollars in services that go to other nonprofits is just highly offensive to me. And I think it's important that we as citizens call out this type of behavior, because it is performative and it doesn't serve us as a community. And so I would just urge you to have a more transparent portal on your website, so that I'm not spending hours and hours trying to figure out exactly how much. And it's way more than $3 million. I firmly believe that. But I believe we as citizens deserve to know exactly how much the council president's organization receives from the city of Jacksonville.
And then once again, Leslie, you were before the council right before it voted on the new budget. Let's play that video.
Leslie Jean-Bart, address on file. I want to speak to you about the drive that is behind this budget debate. It's a drive to try to define who we are as a city, and you are hearing from the people who we actually are, who we want to be as a city. We don't want to be a city that takes. We want to be a city that gives. Elected officials should be the very best of us. And those of you up there are representing just core take, as somebody said. Where's your compassion? Where is your honesty? Where is your love for your fellow people? We didn't elect you to make us look bad. We elected you so that you would speak for us. And so one thing I want to just point out for everybody that's here, you can't find money for anything, but you can when you want to. And that's why there's $12 million in this budget that y'all have put together for your council president's organization, Boys and Girls Club. Tell me how you can do that and still cut the budget for everybody else.
These seem to be pretty serious allegations. Do you have any evidence or documentation to support your charges? And if you do, what is it?
So I don't see them as allegations. They're facts. You can put, 2 and 2 together and get 4. but 2 and 2 are still 2 and 2, you know? So the information is documented in the records. The $12 million is in the schedule of contracts for Kids Hope Alliance. And I was provided with the schedule of contracts. I spoke directly with the executive director of Kids Hope Alliance, who confirmed that those numbers were correct. And I even stated it in a Jack's Bar luncheon in a question to Carrico, where he, of course, didn't deny it. So the amount of money that Kids Hope Alliance is giving to Boys and Girls Club is documented in city records.
But let me ask you, is that, it's okay, let's take the $12 million. What is that an increase from? I mean, is it always been $12 million, or was it a lot less than that and it's grown to $12 million without anybody much paying attention?
It certainly has. I have asked for their schedule of contracts going back to the beginning. And someone, they've told me they'd have to do some research to go all the way back to the beginning of Kids Hope Alliance. But when you're looking at their 990s for Boys and Girls Club, which you can find their 990s online as a nonprofit, you will see that back in, I want to say maybe 2018, their revenue was around $9 million. And according to Carrico during the luncheon, he said Boys and Girls Club revenue now is $31 million. That's a significant jump, especially when the city is providing a good portion, more than 1/3 of that.
Let's underline that. I want to make sure that our listeners and viewers heard exactly what you were saying. You're saying that at one point it was $9 million, then it went up to $12 million, and now you're saying it's up to $31 million when taking all of the funding together?
So the $12 million is just from the city currently. But the $9 million, it did, there was an increase. And then, of course, you had COVID where nothing was happening. So you have a drop and then you see the increase again. And so I don't know, when the $12 million, a good bulk of that is a food contract. That was a sole source contract. And so that's a good chunk of the money is for that sole source contract. But I used 2018 because you did have Terrence Freeman, who, when he got on council, he then got employed by Boys and Girls Club. And then after that, you had Kevin Carrico, who joined council. And so before they joined council, according to their 990, their revenue's $9 million. And according to Kevin Carrico 2 weeks ago, it's now $31 million. And so that is a huge jump, especially when you're looking at, you're reading the 990 and it says 11 million for salaries. There are a lot of questions there. And I think those questions are appropriate to ask.
What's next for you? What are you involved in next?
Well, let's see. I'm always involved in something. I'm one of these people. I tell people my occupation is official busybody, and I lawyer on the side.
Okay.
I lawyer for a living. The other stuff is just fun, right?
That's a hell of a hobby.
Right? It really is. So, I'm going to continue to look into this. I'm going to continue to look into the contracts and how they were given. I just think that this is so significant, and it wasn't easy for me to find this out. I had to really push to get this information. It wasn't listed on someone's website. It wasn't right in front of us. And most people had no idea it was that high. And that's just one organization. We know other council members get money from the city as well. And I haven't had a chance to look into them, but I'm going to look into them too, because, we trust our public servants. We want to trust our public. And if they're, benefiting more than the average citizen, that's a problem. And at least it should be disclosed. And then let us decide what we want to do with it. So I'll keep digging. I will, I'm looking at helping other people get into office that I can have faith in.
Yeah, would you give us 60 seconds on that part? Because this is to me a fascinating venture in trying to find good, upstanding candidates that will get into public life.
I think that's important that, a lot of times there are people out there who aren't already involved in politics who would make great public servants, and they just maybe don't know how or who to get in touch with. So we are doing a lot of outreach into the community to make sure that we're finding people who will put community first. That shouldn't be so hard. It really shouldn't be so hard. But we really want to make sure in a town this big, like I said at City Council, our elected officials should really be the best of us. So that's what we're looking for.
Leslie, thank you so much for coming back.
You're welcome.
Coming to our show. I'd like to have you back to talk more about the candidate enrollment or the recruitment, if you will, at a later date. So
definitely.
Let's talk about that.
Definitely.
All right. We wish you luck. Last week, we told you our friend Mike Hightower was in Ukraine, and he still is there for a few more days. Some of you have asked why he's there in Ukraine, and we put that question to him. So let's show you what Mike responded to that question by saying.
I'm in Ukraine. Very quickly, I'm here as part of a larger group called Med Global, which is basically surgeons and doctors without boundaries that come into this place. So we're here it's a 3 or almost 4 day thing on healthcare. And it's what can we do now? And then afterwards, what can these surgeons, doctors all over the country, from all over the world, come in and help? After this damn war is over. We had a meeting today with the interim ambassador, United States ambassador to Ukraine, just an incredible lady. Her name is Julie Davis. She's a career person. We had a great conversation. Next week, we're going to be going to what I would call the Veterans Center. This is where a lot of the veterans who were able to be saved on the front line were now going to rehab. Most of it is unfortunately amputation. So we're going to be going through that. As maybe you don't know, being chairman of the Homeless Vet Center here in Jacksonville, 5-star. So I'm bringing some messages and some items from 5-star to them. If you all remember correctly, when the Russians invaded Ukraine, they took over villages and cities. They kidnapped thousands of children. A lot of those children were kept in those villages candidly as sex slaves. And so we're going to be visiting 2 of those children's centers, find out what we can do long term. The other 2 mics on this show have incredible contacts. Jacksonville is a very giving, compassionate, charitable organization. So we're really going to be going through the different sections of Ukraine. I don't think we're going to get anywhere close to the front line, hopefully, but I can tell you that we did get an alert earlier today, but the Ukrainian military and their progress in weaponization is pretty awesome. The other thing is that they're going to be sending us out. What I heard from the ambassador is just to have people who have not been here before, who can see it, objectively see it, and can take that story and take it back.
Once Mike is back in home and gets his sea legs back under him, we're going to have him back on just to talk about his trip to Ukraine, what he thought he was going to see, what he did see, and the fine work that they all did while they were over there. So we're all looking forward to that. And, of course, we're wishing our friend Mike a very safe journey as he concludes that trip and comes back to the United States and back to Jacksonville. Anyhow, we thank you all for watching or listening. However you're doing it, we hope you'll do so every week when we put up a new program. And once again, we want to thank our sponsors, the Jacksonville History Center, and the fine folks who work there, as well as the very generous donors who keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. We'll see you all again next week. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm Scott Westerman, and I produce Mike's on Mike, with a special thank you to listeners like you who support the program through your contributions to the Jacksonville History Center. 2 years ago, Dr. Alan Bliss and his team generously agreed to aggregate gifts from listeners like you to help pay for the production and distribution of Mike's on Mike. When you specify Mike's on Mike with your donation to the History Center, your support makes these programs possible. And you're engaging in a relationship with the premier organization that celebrates the rich history of our hometown. If you enjoy these weekly conversations, consider a contribution to the Jacksonville History Center at jackshistory.org. Say it's for Mike's on Mike. And if you're already a Mike's on Mike supporter, thank you.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, and Mike Miller can be found on your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit the website at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversation with Mike's on Mike.